everyone, and welcome back to the Mid.Life.Artist Podcast. I am your host, Brandi Reynolds. If you are new here, we just started this podcast. The first episode dropped last week. It's with the wonderful Christine Surfozo, who's a dancer and teacher. I will link that below if you're interested. This week's is equally wonderful. I talked to Andrea Schroeder, who is an artist and a creative coach and the creator of the Creative Dream Incubator. And she shares so much wisdom and love and insight and just has a wonderful attitude and outlook on life. And I know you're just going to love this. As with last week, we do touch on topics of mental health like depression. So just know that that is there, and be good to yourselves. And thank you all for being here. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Mid.Life.Artist Podcast. I am Brandi Reynolds, your host. This is Andrea Schroeder. Today with us. I'm so excited to have her here. Andrea and I met on a message board like 157 years ago. She's always been a creative inspiration. Even back then, I have loved following her journey, so I'm so glad to have her today. Andrea, tell everybody just right off the top where they can find you if they're interested in talking with you and interacting with you after this is over.
My website is creativedreamincubator.com. And there is like a contact form on there. And I am Creative Dream Incubator on Instagram and Facebook.
Yes. Yes. And so I actually just kind of want to talk just for a second, like to give a shout out to the MMB. That was the Marvelous Board, started by the author Sark. I got on in the early 2000s. I don't know if it was available prior to that.
Yeah.
That's where we met each other. And you had a little bit of a different life than I think you were working part-time and kind of building out what you wanted to do creatively. At the time, I remember you talking about knitting and swimming.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to, so the iteration now, tell us how you kind of got started in, you're still very creative and doing a lot of creative things, but you're teaching and coaching and mentoring and kind of how that started.
So yeah, like when I met you, like I was in my 20s, like kind of a very typical starving artist. And I feel like I always knew I had that creative kind of yearning, like I wanted to do stuff, but I didn't know how, right? Like, and so I just kind of, I worked part-time sometimes. I did my art. Like I was just kind of putting it together as best I could. What happened is I ended up like kind of burning out on not having enough money. And so I got a job when I turned 30. That was probably on the message board. I was going to say less, maybe more because I was bored at work. But then once I started working, and I was still like trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to do this creative stuff? I started taking classes at a center for like spiritual development. And I ended up taking so many classes because I had so many feelings about kind of failing as an artist and not knowing how to do what I wanted to do. And these classes were so helpful that I took so many. I ended up an accredited teacher without ever intending to. But I felt so supported by that work. And I was like working on a volunteer basis doing counseling with people and teaching classes. And that was like, oh, wow, like this is so enlivening to me. I feel so good helping others in this way, and it helps me. And then I just slowly started bringing my own creativity into it, into how I was teaching my classes and meditation circles. But I still wasn't seeing it as something that I could do as a job. I was just kind of grateful to have income and have the kind of mental capacity after work to still be able to do this. And so I was there for quite a few years doing that. And then at some point I just kind of like came to me when, I was teaching a really large class and I was just feeling really good about what I was doing. And I just was like, you know what, I can do this. I can figure it out. And I just had that moment of like, I'm going to figure this out. And that was in 2010. And from there till now has been like a lot of work.
I don't believe it was always the Creative Dream Incubator, right? Wasn't there a different iteration prior to that?
So on our message board, I was called ABC. Yeah, that was my nickname. And so my website was ABC Creativity, but the first course I did was called Creative Dream Incubator.
Okay.
And so I started a second website because I just loved the name. And yeah, I think it took a few years for me to kind of shift into using that as the name. You're right. Yeah.
Okay. And then, so just out of curiosity, were they literally like one day, like, hey, by the way, you're a accredited teacher now? Or like, how did that come? Like,
No, it
here's
was
a poke. And by the way,
it was so there's this like the first 2 years you can just take whatever classes whenever, and there's this third year that like you have to decide you're going into this teacher training program, and so that I was at the point where my teachers were like, hey, like you've done more than you need to be able to start this, and I was like, oh, like I'm not here for that. And they're like, well, like you don't have to want to be a teacher, but this is where you'll get the next level of support for yourself. So that even when I started that more serious year of classes, I wasn't like seeing, I couldn't, just because I'd feel like I'd failed so much in my creative dreams, I wasn't seeing how it could work.
see, that is, I have to say, like, I'm completely going to be behind the scenes, folks, everybody. I'm completely derailing off my prepared questions because the idea that you felt like you had failed as someone who looked at you as like an inspiration of how to do it. Like, look at how, like, she's so, I had to go through the whole idea of like insecurity of even expressing myself, right? And like, you were expressing yourself
Sure.
like in a way that seemed and felt confident to me in that you were just actually showing it to people, right? Which is something I've learned. Just because you show something to people doesn't mean that you're actually like confident about it. But it's, and like you had this kind of vision and you always sort of had this general, seemed like creativity and spirituality were always very intertwined with
Yeah,
you.
for me, yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so now I wonder if you can talk, because one of my favorite things to think about and ruminate on, and this is one of the reasons I was so excited to talk to you, is that how for you creativity and spirituality intersect, like what that feels like for you. Why, why do you think that is? Why do you think spirituality and creativity intersects for you? Do they feed each other for you? Those sorts of things.
That's, I love that you brought that up because it's something that I feel is a bit weird about me. And also, I just want to back up for a second and say, like, I've seen you share a lot of creative things for a very long time, also. And I think I would never have thought that you didn't feel like you were expressing yourself.
Well, you were one of the people who inspired me to start expressing myself. I came on the message board after a really bad breakup where I just felt like just
Yeah.
like a shell of a human. And if I hadn't seen people like you and some of the other people on that board, it never would have occurred to me to like even pursue a creative path.
And I feel like everyone who shares anything does that for so many people without knowing. Like, I
Yeah.
know that you do that for people every day.
Oh,
Like,
thank you.
so.
Thank you. I also have to we're both wearing rainbows. I just have to call that out. Sorry, we can get back to the real conversation now, but I just know we're both
All
wearing
right.
rainbows. I didn't, you know what? I should have purposely known to wear this rainbow for you because I associate rainbows with you so heavily. But I
Yeah,
think well, the universe prompted me to put this shirt on this morning. That's what it was.
totally, totally. Okay, so back to your question. And I was gonna say, I love that you asked it too, because I feel like it's something that's weird about me and that people don't always understand. And
Oh
I've,
gosh, talk more about it.
especially in midlife, I've stopped caring if people understand me. It's like, how does that matter to me? But for me, they're actually the same thing. And it feels like I've always had that creative kind of seed, and like I grew up, my mom made my clothes and like did home decor herself. Like I was always around that kind of creativity, and so that helped me. Like I wasn't starting from zero, right? And but there was always something about it that felt like a healing, and like this is showing me who I really am.
Oh,
And that's something that I've come to learn more with age, that and also with all the people I've worked with over the years, it feels really consistent that our dreams, our creative dreams are a part of us, and they are a way that our soul shows us what is for us and who we are and what we are capable of. And we get so much conditioning from the world about who we are and what we're capable of, and none of that is true. And so our dreams are trying to break through all of that. And that's like my whole 20s, I feel like was just massive self-doubt. Nothing I tried creatively. Like there was a time, like I was technically a self-employed artist, but I was just always trying to figure out how to pay my bills or which bill to delay, like that kind of. And yet I felt very proud of myself that at least I was trying and I was doing it. But that kind of difficulty that creative people have, it's not a sign that we're not good enough or that there's something wrong with our art. It's like this world doesn't support it. That's all. And that those are two really separate things. And that was one thing that really changed for me. So when I had that job, I had some financial stability. Um, I took a whole bunch of business classes to help like get the skills I needed. Whereas like in my 20s, I was just kind of like crying and hoping someone would come along and like be my manager, like do it for me.
I remember talking to somebody or somebody saying like, or maybe it was even on the message board, like back in the day, like you had patrons, you had like wealthy patrons or whatever. Like, can we still get that? Does anybody
Yeah.
else want to be my
Yeah.
patron? I wanted to talk about, and you've mentioned it a couple of times, the word dream and the idea of dream feels like it feels like there's something really grounded in your process in that word. And so can you talk a little bit about like what the dream means to you, what creative dream incubator, like why the word dream and not like your creative process or or
Yeah.
anything like that?
That's a great question. Because it feels special, something about a dream feels like, oh, like it feels out of your current reality and it feels there's a pull to it. It's pulling you towards something. And in the sense of like, also with the internet and just like Google search, like a lot of people find me looking for dream interpretation. And it's just like an area that's not what I do, and it's always been unclear. But it's so in that way, it's like we're dealing with something that's not really real. But in this case, we're trying to make it real. So it's like it's
Right.
very, yeah. I just love listening because I feel like often when we start, like if you just ask an average person walking down the street what your dream is, often it's going to be like, I want to win the lottery or I want like a big house or something. And I think these are all like natural things to want because we don't live in a culture that supports us very well. And so we just want to like have a good life, right? But when we really, like the people who really listen to themselves about what they're dreaming of and give that space, and generally that's only the people who have a dream that's kind of loud enough for them to hear it, the more you give that space, the more it really becomes, oh, this is who I am. This is what I'm actually capable of. And that doesn't like, I feel like it gets very entwined with self-employment, like you're supposed to make a living from it. And I don't think those two need to have any relationship at all. It doesn't matter if it's a financially viable thing. It's just an important thing for you to make space for.
And I love what a lot of what you said just resonated with me. And I just want to clarify for anybody, like we are not actually talking about like when you close your eyes and go to sleep and what you're dreaming of, right? You're talking about sort of the dream or the idea, like something that feels like more like it comes from the heart. And you were saying something about it's got to be kind of loud. Do you feel like this is somewhat of a loaded question? Do you feel like if there was, getting back to this idea of society not supporting us very much, if there was more space to be quiet or to feel like being quiet, it wouldn't need to be as loud?
100%,
Tell
yes.
me your thoughts on this.
Yeah, because we're so busy trying to support ourselves.
Right.
And maybe if we have children, we have to take care of our children. And like, there's just so much. And also, just culturally, like, our cultural values really are about like amassing things and kind of proving your worthiness through status or wealth. Like, it's all so externally focused and really like empty for people who listen to themselves and notice like we have these rich inner lives. We have like imagination and creativity and all of these different feelings and like yeah, there's just a richness to how we could live if we were more supported and having quiet time, creative time, and really listening, kind of honoring the dignity of just life itself without being so focused on making a buck.
Right. I just love the idea of just like the dignity. I want to back up just a half step. So you had this website, and originally Creative Dream Incubator was like kind of an offshoot of a larger
Yeah.
maybe theme. Can you talk a little bit how thinking about your Creative Dream Incubator, how you thought about it kind of when it started, and what has changed for you, if anything?
Oh, everything's changed. So in 2010, there was like people were, it had just been a few years of people really starting to make money online. And there was this
That's a
like,
good point. Yes.
yeah, there were,
Radically different internet, everybody.
right? There were a lot of people starting to make money teaching other people how to make money, which has become a real, I think, pyramid scheme. But there's also a lot of genuine people who are like, oh, they realized how to make a decent living and wanted to share that with others. In the general attitude of that, I believed I was going to make a lot more money than I do. There was a sense that like it's just so easy for anyone, and it's really not. At that time as well, so I was 37. I had a lot more energy, I had a lot more mental clarity, and I don't mind hard work. I mean, I still don't, but I'm kind of tired at this point. I worked so hard. Like, I worked so hard at learning things, and then I worked so hard at what I was creating. So the original, like, so it was 2010 when I decided to do this, and it was 2011 when it became my full-time thing. And so I felt so grateful for the opportunity to do that, and I really wanted to like do everything I could to make that work. And I worked so hard, and I was creating so many classes, as well as doing one-on-one coaching with people. And it's just like I was working at a pace that is completely unsustainable to me now, and probably looking back, it probably wasn't ever sustainable. But that's
Yeah.
another thing about culture. We don't live in a sustainable way in
No,
any way,
no.
including our own energy.
Oh, and also wasn't that around there? It wasn't too long after that that the boss babe became a thing, right? Wasn't it at some point boss babe and like just like I don't. I very much identify with the meme that's like, no, I want to be Moss Babe.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, I want to lay down on the forest floor. I'm tired.
Yeah.
Speaking of tired, one of the things that I'm really interested in talking about is how the creative process is. The reason I keep going back to like how it was then versus how it is now is like things change when you're in midlife, and we a lot of it that we don't have any control of as our bodies, women's bodies especially, go through a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
Can you talk about like what has changed for you in your creative process when you were younger versus now? Like that you've kind of maybe even kind of had to change because your body, your mind, whatever is in a different place than it was back when you could get away with burning the candle at both ends.
Yeah, I love that we're talking about that. I think we should talk about it more maybe. Because for me, some of the worst of my perimenopause symptoms were happening when the pandemic started in 2020.
Oh, fun.
And so,
That's a good time.
right? And
Just let's set everything on fire.
right? So at that time, I am in the process of getting divorced, which is another common midlife thing. But at that time, my husband was a social worker in the inner city, high stress job, and he was working from home, taking all these incredibly stressful phone calls while I'm also working from home. If you can see, my home is an open loft. There's no like,
There's no like this is his
right?
space. Like
And
you're hearing all
really
of this like
traumatizing stuff. Yeah. And then for quite a while, also, one of my stepchildren was here doing school, and it was just like, you know, and it was yeah, I feel like what I ended up doing was kind of just going into a freeze and really just doing, in terms of my work, the bare minimum to get kind of feeling like I just want to kind of get through this. And in that, I feel like it kind of opened up the space for some existential crises and some midlife crises as my perspective started to change. And I'm just really grateful. At that point, my business was functioning well enough that, like, I love what I do. I can work with people when they show up. What I can't do when I'm like that is market or sell anything. And so I wasn't doing that. I was working with the people I already had. So it was like, still kind of getting some liveliness from doing that. But then a lot of the other time, just like kind of in a freeze state, which I think is a part of the midlife process for a lot of women, like just getting to that overwhelm, which and really like feeling all of my feelings about all of that and sitting with all of the questions and thoughts that were coming to me and just noticing like thinking back even like generations in my family, everyone has worked as hard as they could their whole lives so that they didn't die. And I was like, this can't be what life is. And like I'm not feeling like I can keep working like this. And it kind of it felt so disorienting and scary and sad, and it was just like, and I was lucky that I had a really good therapist who already knew me before like things started falling apart. And so a lot of she's like, hey, these are normal like what do you call it, developmental markers that you go through at midlife. There are ways that our perspective of the world changes and where we
That's so
notice
crazy.
it's
You don't think about developmental markers past like kids or
I
teenagers.
know.
Like, do men have to go through this too, or is it just us that gets to re-experience this crap all over
Well,
again?
I feel like men just avoid it by buying a sports car or something.
Fair
My
enough.
husband bought a motorcycle.
You know what's funny is I was telling my husband the other day is like I think I'm the one who actually went through the midlife crisis because when I was 40 I decided we needed to uproot our life and go to Oregon so I could go run in the mountains. So looking back, like
Really?
I feel like that was
But that's brought you so much life, right? And
well,
so much.
absolutely. I'm so glad that I had the experience. Like I feel like I was telling him like I don't feel like I've missed some experience in life. Like I'm not sitting there longing for this experience and feeling like I can't have it. I feel like I fully got to live into the entire experience. There's something, okay. I was like, what was that? There's something on my camera. And fully embody and embrace and experience and like fully live it out. It's not, but I also think that there was definitely, it maybe the impetus to do it was maybe coming from a place of like, I want to catch up or I want to be, or like FOMO or like comparison. Like I definitely think, or like panic of like, I'm at this age. So it was a net benefit, but I also
Yeah.
have to recognize like there was some stuff in there that maybe wasn't the healthiest.
Yeah, I think that's what it's like. I think, and I always thought my midlife would be easy because I took risks to do what I wanted to do my whole life. And then it turns out, no, that didn't make midlife any easier at all.
It's almost, isn't it almost like, yeah, I've already kind of done the scary and hard stuff. Like it's supposed to be easier because I already did the hard. I already burnt I already know what it's like to like have to work on 3 hours of sleep or whatever.
Yeah.
And why isn't it easier? So have you had to, can you talk a little bit about now how you make
Yeah.
space for that to have, what is, for that creative expression to still come through, like kind of what you have to maybe do physically or mentally in your day to allow.
Absolutely. So that, and also I just want to go back. So when I started my business, that was an important thing. Like, how do I take care of myself and what are the routines that help me do my best work? And so I
Oh,
spent years on that. And I had like routines. And that was another part of the pandemic interrupting. Like, I would always go either for a long walk or a bike ride first thing. Because like out fresh air and exercise,
100%.
and then I would
Absolutely.
go to a coffee shop, get coffee, and write in my journal, and then another walk or bike ride back home, and then I can kind of, and so that was like one example of something that was a very cherished routine that I kind of lost in the pandemic, and then in the years since then, there's just been a lot of different upheavals in my life. And it was this last January when I kind of things have settled down and it's like, okay, it's time for me to figure out what's next. And I realized I needed to stop all of my routines, even the ones that are really good. That's what the face my therapist made also.
Just because
Just like, okay.
I mean, because we are such, I think humans love routine. I
Yeah.
think we love routine a
Oh,
lot.
I
It's
love
so
them.
for you to just set it all on fire and be like, we need to start all over.
Yeah.
When you worked years, you developed these routines over years. That is
Yeah.
that like
But I mean, I
you
knew
need
I could
somebody to
pick
buy
it
you
up.
a cake.
Yeah, it was. So I knew that things needed to change, but I didn't know what needed to change. And I knew I could come back to any of those routines. Like everything I learned in that, I hadn't lost. But I was like, I need to stop and just like find out what I really need at this because I'm not the same person. And especially in perimenopause, my brain has really changed. And I'm actually, my doctor put me on the pill last fall, and that's actually helped a lot.
Oh, wow.
But
Congratulations.
so in January, I was kind of feeling like, okay, it's time to refigure. So I stopped everything, and then every day would just kind of experiment a bit, like, what do I need? And really listening to myself. I also, now I normally go to therapy once a month, and I asked her if could I see her more often during this time because I knew like probably I was going to have a mountain of self-doubt, which I did. Because another thing about routines is that you don't really have to think about what you're doing, you're in them, which is so good. But then when you stop that, it's like the space for whatever is there is not, and so all of the self-doubt, all of the fears about like, can I even do this as a middle-aged woman who doesn't like, I can't rely on hard work the way I used to. Maybe I'm not inspiring the way I used to be. Like, I don't know. Maybe I can't work with as many people. Like, what is this going to look like? At the same time that the economy is kind of collapsing and like I need more money. And so, I did spend a couple months really like having a lot of self-doubt, having a lot of fear, and then just slowly listening to those ideas like, hey, do I want to lay on the floor and draw in my journal? Which I do. And I've actually given away my living room furniture, and I got like a fun fur thing and a whole bunch of pillows because I love to just lay on the floor. I'm
Oh
like,
my gosh, that's
you know,
wonderful. Do you feel like there is less barrier to get in touch to what you really need at this point in your
yeah,
life? Yeah,
yeah,
I
and
do
yeah.
as well.
Yeah, working through hard things, having just experience of being yourself, it really teaches you a lot, I think.
Yeah, yeah. One thing that you do is you talk to your dream. Um, which if you guys should all follow Andrea on social media, she talks about it a lot. But can you like so has your dream changed? And is part of your process of relearning these routines and stuff, are you talking to your dream to kind of get guidance there? Can you kind of talk a little bit about
Yeah. So, yes, I talk to my dream. It's one of the things that I teach people almost first thing when you're working with me because if you have a dream, like use that and listen to it. And so also it's like a lot of the life coaching world is telling you to just like stay positive and manifest your dream. And I think actually if you treat your dream as though this is your soul speaking to you, you can learn from it. And when you do that with almost everyone I've worked with, it changes quite often. It doesn't, like, your dream doesn't give a shit about if you manifest it in the real world. There's like all this growth and healing, and just like the magic of being who you are and continuing to find out who that is and what you want next. That's where all of the magic is in that. Sorry, what was the rest of your question?
it. So has your dream changed?
And has it changed? Yeah. So, I mean, and that's the thing about divorce as well, because I had this life planned that was like in an instant gone. And then in the few months after, one of my
Isn't that
children,
also because that was also COVID-ish, right? COVID-ish times. So like
it,
COVID and then kind of a little after, like
yeah,
still, yeah. So upheaval on top of upheaval.
yeah. On top of that, one of my stepchildren suddenly became life-threateningly ill at the same time. And he's okay now, but there were 3 months where he was in the hospital and we didn't think he was going to make it. And so it was like a lot. And I couldn't find my dreams, and I was feeling desperate to be like, I want something to dream of. And that's another part of dreaming, like just like if are hard, like having something to look forward to. And so I had a dream at that time, which was to get an RV and travel with my cat.
Amen, sister. Just come pick me up. I'm in Oklahoma. You don't even have to just slow down. You don't even have to stop. Just a ton and ton.
And like, yeah, it just felt so good to think about and to dream about. And I don't know if I'll ever do that because now I feel like I'm just happy in my life where it is. But that kind of helped me like in a really stressful time, just have something to dream about. But in January when I started like just giving myself more space to really figure out what I want. I wanted to find out who I am as an artist now. And I want to kind of live my life with art as the main thing. And everyone, so at that time, I was taking it very seriously, and I was like, while I'm redoing my routines, also, I want to be making art every day. And everyone that I talk to about it is like, oh, like, what are you making? And I'm just like, no, I don't care what
Right.
I'm making. Or like, I'm making myself, right? Like, I want to know what I do.
Oh my God, that is the quote. I'm making myself. I love that so much. Can you say, because I think this is such an important perspective, and we will get to like kind of some topics of like what would you say as advice, or like talk to, if you had to talk to somebody getting into it or a younger person. Can you just talk about the importance of like just making art to make art, like make bad art, make stuff that you never like. Can you talk a little bit about your perspective on that? As again, people, a creative coach and mentor, I feel like a wonderful perspective.
I think it's vital to have, like, to me, it's journals, to have these books full of things and like sometimes I just scribble and cover a page in a color. Like, I'm not making fine art, and like,
Yeah.
it's just about listening to yourself. Again, like, I want to make this page orange, or, so right now, in my province, there are a lot of wildfires, and some of the excavation routes are on fire and people can't get out, and it's really scary. And so this morning I just like cried and wrote about how I hope everyone's going to be okay. I wrote about how angry I am that we're pretending climate change isn't happening. I wrote just everything. And and then I drew this little thing a bunch of people crying. And when I say draw, like, it looks like a 3-year-old drew it. Like, you don't have to, doesn't have to look like anything. But I drew people crying and these tears gathering, and it said, I hope our tears help us see more clearly. And I don't know where it came from. It just kind of like was what soothed me in the moment. And that was such a meaningful thing.
Yes.
And having space to do that, that was the number one thing when I like refigured my routines. Even though for so long I thought fresh air and exercise, without it I will die. It's like, actually, this is what I need even more. Honestly, we should have both. We should have everything we need. Right? But like,
So, but
this came out
and
of
no, I think that's I so just to add to that idea, like, yes, I'm a huge proponent of fresh air and exercise, but I also find myself, especially now, going through seasons where the routine changes, the type of exercise changes, the way I'm getting outside changes, the art, like I need to make art in the mornings versus in the nights because that's what feels better. So I think it can be really, I mean, I just think it's so brave to preemptively like be like, I'm getting rid of every routine, because I know that when I have felt natural desires to change up a routine come up, my first feeling is resistance, because that is a safe, like, I've already established that. I already know that feels good. To your point, I don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
I can get it, and I know I'm going to get this, whatever good brain chemical that going outside or doing X, Y, or Z does for your brain. And like all of a sudden feeling like, no, I want to do something different. And that there's an uncertainty there.
Yeah, it's scary. And I think it's also like when you get into a routine because it feels good and it's working for you, do you mean to do that for the rest of your life? Or is it what feels good right now?
I think that's so important, just to say that out loud to
Yeah,
people.
I could
Yeah.
use
Yeah.
those too. I
Yes.
totally
Yes. I
do.
love it. That's such a good affirmation and confirmation. Like, it just has to feel good. Like, whatever is working for you now.
And it is, there's all these jokes and memes about it, but what feels good really changes dramatically in middle age.
Yes.
You
Oh
know,
my gosh. Yes.
I used
Yes.
to every spring, as soon as, because I live in Winnipeg, there's a lot of snow all winter. And as soon as it's even almost ready to ride a bike, I'm out there even on the ice still,
I've seen
like,
you. Yes.
as much
Yes.
as I can. This year, I was like, you know what? I'd be happy to just open the window and get some fresh air. Like,
Yeah.
and that felt like a joy. and I barely, I am going for bike rides, but I'm waiting till the ice is gone. I'm like, I'm not going to risk falling. And going out first thing brought me so much joy, and there was so much enthusiasm in that. And it's part of midlife is grief too, right? So I'm grieving that that's just not my experience anymore. And that kind of makes space for me to really appreciate, well, what does feel right for where I am.
Well, I think that's so important to talk about is the grieving process because, and again, I think a lot of it is because there's so much that's out. You recognize even more, regardless of let's pretend that everything out in the world is sunshine and lollipops. You are still, at least my experience, completely out of control in your body. I'm having a hot flash right now. So uncomfortable. So there is a grieving process for like, this doesn't work anymore. I can't sleep, or like, what, these things don't feel good anymore. And what has been your experience then on creating through grief or with grief, or how are you talking or working with grief and in your along with creativity?
I've been doing quite a bit of just like journaling about grief right now. Like, I felt like this big goal of finding out who I am as an artist, and it felt like I was supposed to do something, even though I wasn't trying to make it be about whatever I create. I thought something would really change. But what happened is I liked to just write something, like kind of listen to myself, write something that feels true in really big letters, and then paint around it. And then the time it spends painting around it, I'm really thinking about it. So I've been doing that about grief, like thinking about how like there's so much on the other side of grief, and about how grief is a way of expressing our love. And I have this new friend who just moved to my city to become a chaplain to help people in their grieving process, because she's like, oh, our world is so bad at grief, and we have so much grief ahead of us. Like, large generations who are aging and will be passing, but also everything else that's happening in the world. Like, we have so much grief to do. And then again, culturally, we're terrible at it. We have terrible ideas about what it is and values around it. And so I think when you really make space for creative practice to listen to yourself, I think grieving is going to be a part of that.
Do you think, I just kind of want to fine tune this, do you think the creative process helps with the grief?
Yeah.
Yeah. Feels like it keeps it moving.
Somewhere to go. Yeah. Yeah. I once I had a cat named Starfish, and when he died, I knit a starfish. I found a starfish pattern. I had already seen it, so luckily, and it was kind of complicated because it's all these, you don't need to knit a starfish. And so I knit that starfish and stuffed it, and that process was really good for me because it was like a way of continuing to spend time with him.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I want to switch gears a little bit, or maybe it's the same gear. I don't know. Inspiration. Another topic I like to spend a lot of time thinking about is inspiration and what it is. And because I'll say this, because I think there's an idea for people, if they're not necessarily making art in some form or fashion, that they think maybe they have to rely on inspiration, or they think inspiration looks a certain way or feels a certain way. So I would love for you to talk about your relationship with inspiration, if you have one, or if you don't have one.
That, one thing about being really committed to your creativity and to following where that leads, I think, is you do have to make that decision. I'm showing up for this every day or 3 times a week or whatever works. And it doesn't matter how you're feeling when you show up.
Yeah.
So it's really like, for me, the times when I feel that inspiration and like I'm excited about something, they just don't come as often as they did before the pandemic. Like, so many things have happened.
Yeah.
So when I feel that, I'm so grateful. But I can't rely on that to be creative.
And then on the other hand, because I think it's important to talk about this stuff too, what are your favorite, how do you procrastinate, and how do you deal with procrastination? Because I think that's so important to talk, because it's going to come up, and we are all human. We're all going to procrastinate sometimes. What's your favorite way to not face something? And
Procrastinate.
then how do you get yourself out of it too?
So that's one thing with all these midlife changes and my new routines that I'm a lot more accepting that like I just can't today. And so I don't if I
Amen.
can.
Oh my
And
gosh.
then
I thank you for, I think I love, yes.
yeah.
Talk more.
And so in terms of my work, and, even when I was younger, I still like, we all have variance in how much energy we have and stuff and what kind of energy we have. And so my solution to all that was to be very organized. And I use a project management app and like everything is in there. So I don't lose anything. And so I look at that and be like, okay, so like what has to get done? Because I do have that commitment and like I don't
Yeah.
want to flake out on people. And so I don't do it when I wouldn't just not show up after I had an appointment with you, right? And so in that way, I've always done that where I could rearrange things if I'm just not feeling it today. My favorite thing would be to lay in bed and watch Netflix and eat chips. There it is. But it changes when I have permission to just go with my energy.
Yes.
Like, so now I'm not necessarily procrastinating. I'm trusting that I'm going to feel better, that I am going to want to, and that, so then I think about if I need rest right now, what is the quality rest? Because Netflix and chips is not quality rest. I'm not going to rejuvenate myself that way. And so if I'd be like, you know what, still that's what I want to do, then okay. But I wanted to kind of get myself to recognize, would you like to just take a nap? Because sometimes a 20-minute nap is all it takes, right? Or do you want to go for a walk? Like what feels like the right. And then on the flip side, it's also looking ahead at my schedule. So like I wanted to have some mental clarity left to talk to you today, so I didn't do that much earlier on this afternoon. And like those kinds of things, like recognizing my actual capacity, which is always very frustrating because it's nowhere near what we want it to be. But if this is my actual capacity, what do I want to use it for today?
I think that's so important. Like I just want to really fine tune that for anybody who happens to be listening, just the like acceptance and like being real and saying this is what I actually can get done today. And I think that's just so important because beating ourselves up or saying should or like that's getting into external stuff that it doesn't fix or help anything. It doesn't make you like put the chips down and turn off sirens is my thing that I'm watching on Netflix. So on to another favorite topic. And I phrase this as like, what is the worst piece of advice you've ever been given? But I also wanted, because again, like, I think there's been plenty of messages, and you've touched on it earlier when we're younger, that are just so unhelpful. You can also include any good advice that you've, that you've gotten. It's just, I think sometimes we can learn more and laugh more at the bad advice.
Yeah. I think it's been pretty consistently the idea of fake it till you make it, which is connected to just think positive, and the idea that like pretend to be somewhere you're not. And there's people making a lot of money and their only coaching skill is telling you to fake it till you make it. And there's other people who don't have the like whatever the brain or the feeling to even be able to do that. Like it just
Oh my
doesn't,
gosh.
but like the opposite, the best advice is actually the fears and the self-doubts you have are rich places to explore in you. They're not the truth. And if you just like think positive, fake it till you make it, and like shove all that down, you can probably, depending on a lot of things, but you can still like succeed in the outer world, but you're not being more you. You're not like, there's so much healing and growth that comes from pursuing a dream in a more like the way that I'm talking about, really listening. You miss out on all of that. And like you become, you can, if you become successful, you're still not happy.
Yeah.
And there's still like that sense of I just want more
Yes.
and more and more. And that's what's killing us right now, that like no one ever says what's enough. Like,
Oh, I think that's so important to talk about. Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
And also listening to my fear and self-doubts and really like the work, the deep work of really getting in there. That's what's helped me actually like have my dreams in a sustainable way. 'Cause like
Yes.
I don't think we all have to be self-employed with our dreams. I don't think that should be a goal ever. It it always felt important to me, and in hindsight, I see because there's a lot of way. Like I think I might be autistic. There's a lot of ways that I'm just different from other people, and that working is kind of it doesn't work for me. Like in terms of like the flexibility I have. Like I still work hard, but like in the ways I can, in the times I can. And so that kind of flexibility to live my life my way has been so important to me.
Yeah.
And I couldn't have gotten here and had like, I'm not a wealthy person, but I have financial stability. I couldn't have done that without really listening to my own fears and self-doubts and all of that stuff, the hard
Oh,
stuff.
thank you for sharing that. I think that's such an impactful thing. So I really appreciate that perspective. And I hope it's really taken, really internalized. Um, and I just, so lastly, I mean, this is your job, but and what you do, but somebody getting started on a dream or started on creativity, what would you like to share with them from your perspective at this point? Um,
Getting started, I think you should celebrate that you're doing it. If you're older, you might want to judge yourself for not having done it yet. And that's not the way. It's amazing that you're taking your dream seriously, that you're actually saying, I have a dream. It's incredibly brave. Most people in the world will never admit to themselves that they have a dream, not because there's something wrong with them, but because our culture really makes it very hard. And so if you've actually overcome that and you're saying to yourself, I think I have a dream, then you should congratulate yourself. You're being extremely brave. And I encourage you to validate your dream, take it seriously. And I know I had said in the beginning, like, I didn't see a way to do what I wanted to do, and so I didn't see the path at all. You don't have to see the way.
oh,
And
yes,
in
yes.
fact, no one can, right? Like that.
Whoa, that's such an important, you're not alone in that you can't see the way.
One thing that's been common with everyone I've ever worked with, we're all wrong about what the path will look like.
Oh my God. I love that. I love
Yeah.
that perspective. Yes.
So just like don't put pressure on yourself. Like don't quit your job tomorrow because of your dream. Don't put any pressure on yourself, but do give yourself as much time as you can and like give your dream as much attention as you can in your life as it is. Because I was think like your dream is here in your life as it is. It's not like sometimes we think we need to wait for something to change to give it space, but it's actually here for this life that you already have.
That is, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you again for being on this. I just want to reiterate, we're coming to a close, but I just want to reiterate Creative Dream Incubator online and on the social medias. Andrea is somebody that you want to get to know and follow. She's got a lot of wisdom to impart. Andrea, thank you so much